Hello! So, I've been trying to read this book for a really long time. The Gates of Janus by Brady. And I'll be honest, I felt really kind of like guilty when I bought it because it was written by a criminally insane psychopathic murderer who is currently in prison, obviously. But I was really curious. I wanted to know what was in it, you know? And I was kind of even like scared to look at it. But yeah, The Gates of Janus, Serial Killing and Its Analysis by the Moors Murderers, Ian Brady. Moors Murderer, Ian Brady. So before I delve into the insanity that I'm about to try to explain, analyze, and give my thoughts on, I just want to provide a little background on who Ian Brady is and what he did. So I will link in the description like what my sources are. I would prefer just to do it from memory, but I don't want to get my facts wrong, so let's go to Wikipedia. Yeah, I know, pretty professional. Just a short summary here. So he was born, keep in mind this all takes place in the UK. He is not an American serial killer. He's from the UK. He's born in 1938 to a waitress. He didn't know who his father was. There's no evidence that he ever tortured animals. He ended up being taken in by a totally different family because his mom couldn't take care of him. He was actually very intelligent from a young age, to the point of where he went to a special academy. He kind of got in trouble off and on throughout his youth, was put on probation, had charges against him. He had 2 relationships. One of them ended after he pulled a knife out on another boy. And he was later... he had to live with his mother again. And his mom was married to Patrick Brady, which is where he got his last name, Ian Brady. Yes. So moving on from that, he became an alcoholic for a little while, worked in hard labor, which he didn't like. And then it says that he decided to better himself, got a bunch of instruction manuals, locked himself away in a room, and basically he taught himself how to do clerical work. Which is where he later met Hindley, whom he would later is the woman he would commit the murders with. As for Hindley, she had an abusive childhood. Kind of feel like she had some kind of dependent personality, maybe. But either way, she had a very impressionable personality, to the point of where she was infatuated with him from the moment she met him. In her diary entries, she would write about him a lot. They would go on dates. He drove a motorcycle. he was obsessed with learning about Nazis, the Holocaust, just things like that. And he kind of got her into that and shared that with her, Nazi atrocities, and that was kind of what their relationship built on. There's a quote that could kind of explain their dynamic. This is what Hindley's saying. Within months, he had convinced me that there was no God at all. He could have told me that the earth was flat, the moon was made of green cheese, and the sun rose in the west. I would have believed him, such was his power of persuasion. So that gives you some idea of what he was able to do. So moving on from that, they've met. They kind of have this way of enabling each other's dark sides, making them feel like it's okay. Probably more enabling him than him enabling her, but whatever. I'm sure you get what I'm saying. So after that, between the years of 1963 to 1965, they would go on to murder 5 children, and sexually assault at least 4 of them. And they are called the Moors murderers because that's where they hid all the bodies, was in Saddleworth Moor. That's where they buried all the children. Their gimmick is they would go out, they would drive around, and Hindley would say that she had lost an expensive glove, and then she would con the child or teenager to come help her find it. And that's how they would kidnap the children, teenagers. 5 of them. So that's a little background on who Ian Brady is, what he did, the control he had over people, his level of intelligence, his background, just what he was able to do to a young woman, to the point of where she assisted in him murdering and mutilating young children. Anyways, a little intense. So I got this book and I was kind of scared to get into it. I would probably read like the first page and then I'd have to reread it again because I didn't understand it. I kind of have a modest education. I graduated from high school. I graduated from community college with a liberal arts degree. I don't want to say that I'm like smart or anything, but I do okay. But this book, keep in mind it's written by someone who's criminally insane. I just didn't understand it. I still don't really understand it. So I basically had to go through and highlight and take notes and really analyze and like reread everything because it's just that hard. And I'm kind of debating, is Ian Brady a genius or is he just a pseudo-intellectual with a really nice, good dictionary and a lot of time on his hands? Like, I don't know. I don't have the kind of background and experience to be able to tell, if someone is genuine or not in the way they present themselves in writing. But he seems really, really, really freaking smart. But in a very flawed way. My first impression of this book is basically, I kind of feel like it's going to be one huge justification for committing crimes and murder against other people, and why it's okay, and why doing that and accepting the dark side of yourself makes you superior to other people. I mean, I don't want to judge the whole thing because I haven't read it all yet. I've only read the first chapter, but I kind of feel like that's where this is going. That being said, let's get started. So he starts out by defining what murder is: the premeditated killing of one human being by another, outside the law without official sanction. So within the law, murder is not murder, by his definition. So, but then he goes on to say that legal validity is of little consequence. And then he cites examples like Auschwitz, Vietnam, and war, global slaughter, etc. So I can't tell if he's saying that murder is murder no matter what, or if since murder is okay within a legal sense, that murder should always be okay. Like, I'm not really sure what he's trying to say. He's probably not even sure. Then, the next part, he goes on, he talks about white-collar criminals and how law and order leads to freedom only for the few elite, the wealthy and the powerful. Like, and I started thinking of like the 1%, people who have all the money, who are in control of everything. And he's kind of right in a sense that they don't have to answer to anyone. They don't ever have to go to prison for their crimes. But the way this is written and presented, it almost seems like he's envious of those people with wealth and power who can get away with whatever they want. Like, he almost wishes he could be them. Like, he's jealous of them. It got to a point while I was going through this that I had to put a P next to every projective statement I found, and I put a J anywhere that I sensed jealousy or envy or resentment. I don't know. Like I said, I don't consider myself to be a genius or anything. This is really hard for me, so just bear with me if I've dumbed this down a little too much. But if you've read this book, I'm sure you understand. Then he goes on to say that one obvious reason why we so enjoy the fall of such public paragons and private criminals is that it happens so seldom. We may envy them, their great wealth and power, but we never quite admire them as we do the relatively more honest, disadvantaged blue-collar criminal who runs the risk of severe penalty. So that's an example of what Brady thinks of other people and how other people think and how other people work. And because he feels that way, he assumes that everyone else feels that way too, because we only have ourselves to use ourselves to understand other people, right? We only have our own selves to understand others. So it's like a huge projective statement that he assumes just because he thinks that way, that everyone else does. But he's a psychopath. So it's like this huge, all of this is just this huge confession to psychopathy. And you can literally see how a psychopath thinks, how they reason, how they feel, why they do what they do, or why they've done what they did. And it's like this, oh my God. Okay, so then he goes on and explains that morality and the law are defined by the ruling class, the wealthy, the powerful, but the wealthy and the power don't have to answer to their own rules. It's not very organized. He skips all over the place. So forgive me if this seems like it doesn't make sense. After that, He states, the majority of people, rightly or wrongly, regardless of geographical location, believe that we all know instinctively what is the right thing to do in all matters simply by standing back and applying our own decisions to ourselves. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But Bernard Shaw spotted the flaw in that idealistic argument. Do not do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You might not share the same tastes. So thinking about this at first, it might make you question that. It might make you think about that. It might make you think, well, that's very true. Nobody knows what I want, and I can only use what I want to figure out what other people might want, but what if they don't want that? Right, I might want sugar in my coffee, and you might just want cream, right? But when you look at it from a universal morality, obviously, I don't want to be murdered because my life will end, so I can assume that other people might not want to be murdered. Right? But psychopaths can't empathize, so they're not gonna think that way. So then he goes on to say, most people are not positioned to do what they would like to see done to the high and mighty, who invariably escape the rigors of the law as though by divine right. See, there's more projection, there's more jealousy. He wishes he could be above the law. But obviously he's not because he's in prison. There's so much. Okay. So then after that, it progresses into, we continue to believe we know what is cruel or kind, selfish or selfless, fair or unfair. Yet we endlessly struggle to explain to ourselves and to others why we are in conflict with such behavioral norms. I'm not in conflict with behavioral norms. Most people aren't, because they understand why they exist. So that's another projective statement. So Brady believes that we should all play by our own rules, that we should all follow our own moral system, that we shouldn't follow what the minority has told us to do. But the flaw in that belief system is that not everyone's morals. How do I even begin to explain this? Not everybody's morals are right. It depends on how sound of mind you are and what reasoning you've used. He believes that religion and education are tools of mind control that are created by the elite minority that are controlling us. He believes in rebelling against society, not conforming. He believes that people who follow society's morality, that the only reason they do that is because they're motivated by conformity, stupidity, that they fear rejection, that they want acceptance, and that they want good reputation, public virtue. Basically, that anyone who is moral, they're motivated by self-interest, that they're afraid of being rejected, or they're just too stupid to realize that they have other choices. So it kind of feels like he views the majority of people as being stupid. I believe in critical thinking. I believe in having your own principles and morals. But you still need to follow society's morals, like the basic morals. Like, he doesn't come right out and say it. He doesn't say, like, in any of this. Only at the beginning he talks about murder, but the rest of it he just refers to it as crime. But I know that he means murder. And logically, murder is immoral, whether you believe it is or not, or whether society believes it is or not. It's not beneficial to us, because if we're going to murder each other, we can't function as a society, we can't have relationships, we can't make transactions, we can't have businesses, we can't live a functional life if we're going to go around just murdering each other. And you don't even have to look at it from a logical or from an emotional or empathetical, is that a word? I don't know, standpoint. Just look at it logically. We can't have a society, we can't function as human beings if we go around killing each other. Whether you think it's okay to kill someone or you don't, it's just not beneficial. I really didn't know what I was getting myself into when I started this, because this is a lot. So if you're a psychopath, your moral system is invalid by default, because you lack empathy and an ability to consider others in your reasoning. Okay, that's basically what I'm trying to say. Yeah, it's amazing to hear a psychopath, criminally insane person describing basically how they think that the masses are intellectually inferior just because they decide to follow the law, and by somehow that the minority who are rich and powerful, who get away with crimes, and the people who commit crimes are superior because they don't conform. It's just so much. Here, this is a statement that supports that perfectly. He says, "In my opinion, professional criminals are more prone than most to think for themselves in a moral manner. Society prefers to foster the contra idea that, by definition, criminals are oblivious to moral and ethical values." Right in that sentence, he's admitting that criminals know right from wrong, but they still choose wrong. How does that make them smart? How does that make anybody smart? It's ridiculous. Conformists who observe, deduce, and vaguely bemoan the immorality of their superiors are largely too afraid of penalty, or are too lazy to run the risk of acting upon their conclusion. So people who follow society's morals are inferior. That's basically what he keeps saying over and over in various ways. This I found interesting. People are not so remorseful or ashamed of their criminal thoughts. They are more afraid of criminal thoughts being ascribed to them by others. I immediately, right when I read that, I thought of pure OCD, where you have horrible, horrible thoughts of horrible acts: murder, molestation, stealing, lying, just cheating, of just having a bad thought about anything like that, anything blasphemous, anything that you would consider personally wrong. And how you do feel remorse, you do feel ashamed, to the point of it being at an unhealthy level where you're impaired, where you feel guilty all day. And yes, that is a mental illness, but that's an example of him. He keeps generalizing people, how he thinks people are thinking. And it's so wrong. And through him doing this, he's showing us how he thinks and how he feels. He's projecting his psychopathy that he's intellectually superior to people because he doesn't conform to laws or morals, and that people who do are stupid, and that they have criminal thoughts that they don't even feel bad about. The only time they'd feel bad if other people were trying to make them look like a criminal. Not all people are motivated by what other people think of them. It's just not, it's not true. Another projective statement. Here we go. This envy is exacerbated, I think that's how you say that, by the media's colorful, exciting stories about criminals riotously enjoying every forbidden pleasure that decent citizens can only dream about. Maybe, in his case, maybe he did dream about it, and then he did it. But not everyone feels that way. It's an interesting theory, but I don't think it could apply to everyone. Then he goes on to say, good and evil, therefore, might therefore be presented simply as a matter of what we think we can get away with without sacrificing reputation. What? It's not about what other people think of you. It's not about your reputation at all. That might be what he was motivated by. That might be what a lot of people are motivated by, but not everybody. And I think the people who are motivated by that, he's giving us so much information in this to understand how psychopaths think, how they view other people, how they view the world, how they compare themselves to other people, what they assume about other people. It's just amazing. I don't know why more people aren't talking about this book, more people aren't reading it. I think this is great if you want to become a criminologist or a forensic psychiatrist or anything where you have to deal with mentally ill criminals or psychopaths or people in prison, just anything like that. This should be mandatory to read because it confesses so much. I keep saying that. Sorry. It's fascinating, really. He even confesses. He says, it is independently documented that I instinctively began this relativistic thought process at the age of 5. He confesses to being a psychopath, and he views his psychopathy as a gift. It's so disorganized. There were 2 statements that I actually agree with so far, which scares me a little bit. Because I'm like, if this guy starts to make sense, then what does that mean? So this is what I agree with. As stated, all but the insane are well aware whenever personal actions conflict with their true beliefs, as opposed to their socially conditioned responses. I believe every intelligent individual, whether predominantly good or evil, possesses a mostly, I can't even read this, idiosyncratic moral gyroscope, which reminds him whether he is in conflict with his own moral and ethical convictions or merely those of others. Individuality is the supreme value, in my opinion, not regimentation or servile social assimilation. So I agree with that. I agree that we should have our own beliefs, but we should also acknowledge socially conditioned responses, but we should keep them separate from each other. We should be aware of what we've been conditioned to believe, and we should form our own beliefs. I agree with that, but I already said this a few times. That's not a justification to murder or commit crime. Just because you personally, in your moral compass, you feel it's somehow okay, that you've rationalized yourself into thinking it's okay. Keep in mind what he said. As stated, all but the insane are well aware. Well, if you're not of sound mind, you can't be making those kinds of decisions. Well, I mean, you can, but you'll have to pay for it later. Then it's just a bunch of anti-religious rantings. It's pretty evident that he's anti-religious and he doesn't value religion. In fact, he kind of hates it. Big surprise there. Now this kind of gave me goosebumps. I really thought about it. He presents a scenario where you were born and spent your life in the Amazon. You didn't have anything to conform to. You didn't have any cultural conditioning. And you're kind of left to your own devices. He says the individualistic urge to experience all one can before losing the race against death would naturally evolve as paramount. Individual quality of life is more relevant than quantity, both physically and intellectually. Zest is the vital ingredient one should seek. Some are born with it. It's hard not to make assumptions, but I still feel like he's talking about murder. Having zest, experiencing life to the fullest by indulging in your darkest fantasies. It's just going on and on and on. Then he goes on. He says, many are content to confine such forbidden journeys to the mind, and frankly, by doing so, most probably achieve more pleasure and satisfaction than they would from committing the deed itself. Being in the position of having tasted both fantasy and deed, I can candidly testify that fantasy is invariably more hedonistically, I can't read, superior, its creator having the advantage of omnipotence. So, basically, he also reveals to us that he has a God complex. It just keeps getting worse and worse. This part, I laughed. I probably shouldn't have laughed, but I did, because I have a really dark sense of humor. I can also state with authority that, contrary to popular belief, much crime is tedious and repetitive hard work, wearing on the nerves, and an anticlimax, in the words of the song by Peggy Lee. After the completion of each successive, escalating crime, the criminal is left spiritually asking himself, is that all there is? Pervasive emptiness insinuates a nihilistic syndrome, the hunt for the chimerical key to knowledge, life, power, or the ultimate sensation becomes a never-to-be-satisfied addiction. So, hypothetically, I mean, if somebody goes and they murder someone, and they conclude that their fantasies were better than the actual murder, why would they murder again? Why would they murder 5 people? Why would they keep trying more and more and more to satisfy an addiction if the fantasy is more pleasurable than the experience? If it's tedious and repetitive hard work that wears on your nerves, why would you murder 5 children? What's the point? It scares me. He's generalizing everyone from himself, through himself, and I imagine if everyone had a psychopathic mind, it'd be terrifying. Then he just goes on to talk about, committing crimes, how it's hard work, the thrill of the crime, he just uses the word crime, he doesn't say murder, but we know he's talking about murder. Show me someone who would hesitate to lie or commit a crime in order to protect or help a loved one or friend, and I will show you a truly inhuman criminal or madman. Laws and externally enforced moral and ethical norms are put into their proper secondary perspective in affairs of emotion when it makes one feel good to break the law if need be. I agree with this statement. However, people are breaking the law to help others, to save their families, to save people, to practice civil disobedience. They're defying unjust laws. And yes, they feel good about it. However, it's not okay to break the law just because you feel good about killing people. Okay. This I found interesting as well. Viewed scientifically, the death of a human being is of no more significance than that of any other animal on Earth. Well, scientifically, I guess so. Yeah. But you've been talking about morality and ethics and conformity and universal law and crime and criminals this whole time, and at the end you're going to bring up science. Right, but ethically, if you view humans as being intellectually superior to animals, and you view yourself and you view criminals as being intellectually superior, then using your logic, that would be significant. I'm a vegetarian, so I value all life. It's so warped. It's so insane. It's ridiculous. I don't know how he was allowed to sit down and write all this and get published. I'm not saying that he shouldn't have. I just don't know how they let him, because he's obviously so unstable and dangerous. If he got a hold of enough naive people like Hindley, he could easily pull a Charles Manson. Like, if people wrote to him in prison, I could see them, if they're young, naive, not able to really think for themselves, because he says a lot of stuff that makes sense. But in between all the stuff that makes sense, it's a bunch of justifications and rationalizations to commit crime. So he concluded it with, the plain, perhaps regrettable fact is that it is a part of the internal human psyche and cycle for the normal individual to derive cathartic satisfaction and enjoyment from savoring the crimes of others, and from luxuriously dreaming of personally committing them. That is not true. That is a generalization, a projective generalization, another one. I enjoy learning about the crimes of others, but I don't dream about committing them. And a lot of people, I'm sure, would agree with that. I don't know. That's coming from him. That's how he feels. So yeah, it was just quite a journey reading these few pages. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to continue this, because honestly, I'm afraid of how much worse it's going to get. It's so much to decipher, ingest, comprehend, kind of rewrite for myself, dumb it down for myself to verbally explain. I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's good exercise for my brain. If you managed to get through most of this video, or even just clicked on this video, let me know what you thought. Did you find this interesting, weird, creepy? Should I keep reading? Should I keep sharing What do you think of Ian Brady? Is he insane? Is he a genius? Is he going to turn into Charles Manson? I mean, well, we don't have to worry about that because I think he's bedridden. But, I mean, do you think he could have become Charles Manson? I don't know. Okay, just let me know in the comments. Okay, bye!